Listen to me. Marriage is messy. Marriage is not always the Facebook picture. We have to change the way we think and not conform to the ways that other people do things. Your marriage is different. You're not married to that person. Don't be conformed. Don't look at other people and try to pattern your marriage after someone else. Be intentional about what you do. And the first clue, the first key thing is to change the way you think about certain things.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Master Level Marriage Podcast, where we discuss all things marriage and where you can discover the tools that you need to have a strong and healthy relationship. Our host, author, and marriage coach, Dr. Ronnie Gaines, will unpack many facets of a marital relationship as he dives into the dynamics of a marriage. In each episode, you will learn what it takes to succeed in your relationship and win in your marriage. Whether you are in the planning stages or have been married for several years, our desire is to help you grow and enrich your life as a couple and become a success story. Subscribe or follow us and be notified of each episode. Please leave us a review and help us help other couples. For more information, visit www.masterlevelmarriage.com. Thanks for checking us out. Now here's your host, Dr. Ronnie Gaines.
Welcome to the Master Level Marriage Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ronnie Gaines, and I'm so grateful that you have chose to be a part of this show today. And, last week we kind of did an introduction to the show and to myself. And one of the things that I stated was I want you to be a part of this with me. I don't want to do this alone. I believe that if we interact together, that we learn more and that we can learn off of each other. And one of the ways to do that is to subscribe to this podcast, leave a message, leave a review, leave me a comment, and we can learn together. And, the comments and the questions could be future shows. And I do want to share each week your comments, and then we can move forward into hearing what you have to say and learning together as we go. And this week I want to share a comment that we received from one of our listeners, and this person states this: I'm excited for this class or this show. Been married twice and have seen much marriage counseling, which was later unsuccessful. Now looking forward to number 3, I'm excited to learn more how to be better together and not make the same problems as in the past. The first thing I want to say about this particular message and comment is the first thing that we need to understand is we have to realize that we must get better and that things must get better to succeed and to win in our marriage. I love that this person has admitted to made some mistakes, made some problems, had some problems going on the third marriage. And this person's saying, I want this marriage to be different. And so the first thing I see in this is that a person goes from marriage to marriage to marriage, and they begin to wonder why things are happening the way they're happening in each marriage. And finally, I believe that, we get tired and we say, enough's enough. We were created and we were designed to be together. We love to be in relationship. We love to have that person love us and be with us, spend time with them, enjoy time. But, many times in our relationship, we're just roommates. We don't enjoy time together. We're just doing life. We're doing side-by-side life, and we get tired of just doing life together and not enjoying life together. And one of the things that I've seen in couples is they go from marriage to marriage to marriage, and they wonder what's wrong with the other person. Why can I not find someone that I connect with? Why can I not find someone that is not some people even say, these idiots that I'm marrying, these losers that I'm marrying. But I want us to first think about this. Every time we go from relationship to relationship, or even if you're in one relationship now, the first thing I see people do is they start this blame game where they blame others. They blame their jobs. They blame this. They blame that. And they make this big long list of everything that's causing causing them to become unsuccessful in anything they do. And when it comes to marriage, we find many, many things. We try to make a list of things that can be our problem. And here's what I found out with most people is that when they begin to make this list, there's one thing missing from the list, and that is themselves. Here's what I believe that a person should do. When we see discrepancies in our life, whether it's our job, whether it's your relationship, whatever it is, make a list of the things that you think might be causing some of your issues. Once you make the list, then go all the way to the top and put your name. Put yourself at the very top of the list. I have found that is the only part of the list, the only person, the only thing in the list that you have the ability to change. We live in a society that blames everyone for our unsuccessful life. We blame the government. We blame our jobs. We blame our supervisors. We blame people around us. We blame our friends. We blame our wives. We blame our husbands. But we never put ourselves on the top of the list. We cannot control, we cannot change anyone other than ourselves. Ralph Waldo Emerson stated this: that which dominates our imagination and our thoughts will determine your lives and your character. When we have it in our minds that it's always someone else's fault, we can never move forward. Last week we talked about growth. We talked about the number one thing that helps you become successful, or even a metric in knowing that we're becoming successful is growth. But we can never grow past our thoughts. We can never grow past our lives when we're always putting the blame on someone else. We blame everyone. I had a person come to me a few years ago, and this person sat down with me and they began to complain about everything in their life, how even in the past when they were growing up, how their parents, how their school, the people they were around, all of their life led up to why they were unsuccessful, why they could not get ahead in life. They blame their boss. They blame the government. They blame their parents. They blame their parents' divorce. Their parents have been divorced, married several times. And so all of this blame, this person sat in front of me and even wept under the pressure of not being successful and blamed everyone. But there was one problem with the list. He was not on it. You know, there comes a point in time where we have to look at ourselves and we say, something's got to change, and I believe that I need to be the first to change. And in this person's comment, I see a change begin to happen. I see that this person wants to start making that change. And when you start making the change, you start seeing things change around you. I've heard it said like this, that if you want to see change around you, you must first be the change. Change your thoughts, change how you view things, change how you see things. And when you begin to change the way you think, things start changing around you. And I want us to look at this today, that there's a 5-step process. I call it the 5 cognitive process of changing everything around you. And it starts with this. you and I, every day, we receive information. Information's neutral. Most information that comes into your mind is neutral. Really doesn't have a lot of meaning yet. Some things are facts. Some things are just the way that we view things. They come into our mind, and it comes in as information. You're scrolling through Facebook. You come across a post from someone that's on your friends list. Instantly, you see the picture, you see the post, you see what they've written, and it's information. Now, it's neutral at this point, but it changes as you give it interpretation. Now, the first thing that I want you to see through this process is information. You know, you're sitting in a state of relaxation. We'll call it psychological relaxation. Your mind's at ease. You're not in a state of stress. You're just reading. As soon as that post comes across, it's just information. You're still in a state of cognitive rest. You're still in a state of psychological rest. But however you interpret this information will determine what state that you stay in. Now let's take this back to marriage. You're at home. Let's talk to the wives for just a moment. You're at home. He's supposed to be in for dinner at 7 o'clock. You cook this big dinner. You're excited about him coming home. You're ready to eat dinner. And all of a sudden, 7 o'clock gets here. He's not home yet. Well, that's the first part of information that you're receiving. 10, 15 minutes later, he's still not there. And all of a sudden, you begin to create an interpretation of the information that you're getting. Here's the critical point of this 5-stage process. First, the information. You're in a state of psychological rest. Whatever you do with that information will determine whether you stay in a state of psychological rest or you transition to a state of psychological tension or stress. He's not home. He was supposed to be home at 7, and these thoughts begin to go through your mind, and you begin to interpret the information. Here's such a critical point, and here is the key to this 5-stage process, is we must change the way we think. We must, listen to me closely, we must change the way we think about the information that we receive. It determines how you think about a certain situation. It determines what you think about the information that you're receiving. It matters what you believe. I've learned this, that whatever you believe will determine your outcome. Whatever you believe will determine your direction. It's not intentions that determines your direction. It's what you believe. It's what you let come into your mind, take root, and whatever you believe determines your outcome, will determine your direction. You know, I'm a jogger, so I love to jog. And so one time I was on the treadmill and I'm running, and I'm thinking about this very idea about how you can change the way you think, because your mind is this incredible organ in your body. So I thought, I'm running a certain pace, and the treadmill, once you set it, it will keep this certain pace. And I thought, I'm going to check and see if my mind can cause a change. And so instantly, I thought, I'm going to slow down. And all at once, I began to slow down. It didn't seem like I changed anything in my body. It seems like I didn't intentionally change anything. And I just started slowing down. And I was just about to go off the back of the treadmill. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I got to speed back up. So I sped back up, and I get back into the flow of the treadmill. And I thought, well, I'm going to try that one more time. So I thought, speed up. And the next thing I know, I'm bumping the front of the treadmill. Our mind is phenomenal. I basically told myself to slow down and told myself to speed up. It gave me the indication that whatever I tell my mind, I'm going to do it. You know, your voice is the loudest voice in your head. You can tell yourself anything. You can try to believe what someone else says, but if you believe something or change your belief in any way, you will do, your behaviors will follow whatever you believe. You know, I tried this again as I was driving down the road because I was understanding that my thoughts or the way I think determine my direction. So I thought I'm going to try one more little experiment. So I'm driving down the turnpike. I'm driving down the freeway. And I'm thinking, if this is true, I want to see how this works because however I think or whatever I set my focus on will determine my direction. So I'm driving down the road and there's not a lot of cars by me. You know, I've got 2 lanes there and there's 2 lanes on the other side, but there's a median that separates us. So I didn't do anything unsafe, but I'm driving down the road and I thought, I'm going to set my focus on out in the field to my right. As soon as I set my focus, my vehicle began to veer towards the right toward what I had my attention set on. And all of a sudden I hit what I call these wake up everybody in the car bumps. And all of a sudden I hit these bumps and I pull the car back and get it lined back out. And I thought, well, you know, maybe my car is just pulling that way. So the next thing I did is I went the other way. I placed my focus on the vehicles to the left or the lane over across the median. And as soon as I placed my focus, in just a few seconds, my car began to veer towards the left. And I come to know that I put my focus to the left or the right, and my mind pulls. And when my mind pulls, my hands moved. I didn't realize I was moving my hands, but my mind determines everything. And your mind determines your thoughts. Whatever that information is that you receive, however you think and however you interpret will become your focus, and it will ultimately become your outcome because whatever you think, whatever you believe will determine your behaviors. This person who sent me this believes that now there can be a change. But there can only be a change if we begin to change the way we think. Everything that we see is not always the way it is. The way we interpret things is not always the way it really is. Sometimes fear is that which does not exist. And so we fear the things that do not exist. And most of the times the things that we fear never come out the way that we initially feared that they would come out. But here's the thing about fear and the way we tell ourselves things, even though it doesn't come out the way that we feared it or the way that we thought it, because of the fear, because of the way that we thought things, it caused another problem. It caused stress. In our relationship, sometimes we fear things, we see things, we interpret information in a way that causes tension, causes psychological stress, and the very thing that we feared or the very thing that we intentionally begin to think would happen did not happen, but it caused a different problem. So we bring problems on ourselves by the way we think. It's basically putting chains on your life, and when we think things and we interpret information in a way that brings psychological stress or tension, it basically, metaphorically, will put chains on your life and you're bound. You know, there was an old movie that came out several years ago, back in the 60s, called Cool Hand Luke. Some of you older generation will probably remember this movie. It was called Cool Hand Luke. Paul Newman was the actor, the main actor in this movie, and it was a his name was Luke Jackson, and it was all about him being in prison. And some of you might remember what this is, but I don't know if you've ever heard. Some of you may have not ever heard of a parking meter. Well, back in the day, there were such things as parking meters, and I know that they may still have some of those now. I know a few years ago I saw some, but they were kind of digital and kind of modern type. But this old type of parking meter, you put a nickel or dime or quarter in it, and however much money you put in it, you would turn it like you would a gumball machine, and it would have this little dial that showed you how much time you had to park in this particular spot. And so the way the movie played out was Paul Newman, he got drunk one night, and he was, I think, upset with these parking meters or whatever. And so he takes this big pipe cutter and he begins to cut these parking meters, and they're just falling over. He's just cutting them down. And of course, that's a federal offense. And so he gets caught, he gets thrown in prison. And Luke Jackson, he cannot stand the thoughts of being confined and in prison. So many times he tries to escape. Well, in one particular time, he escapes. They catch him, bloodhounds and horses and all, they're chasing him down. He escapes. They grab him, take him back to the commons area where all the prisoners were, and they have beaten him. They've beaten him to a pulp. His eyes are swelled shut. They throw him in the middle of the commons area in front of all these other prisoners. And the warden comes in, and he says this. He says, and some of these are lines that even people use today. He said, "What we have here is a failure to communicate." Have you ever experienced that in your marriage? Maybe you're experiencing that right now. One of the top things is that we have problems communicating. He states to this whole group of people and to Luke Jackson, he says, "What we have here is a failure to communicate." He goes on to state this: "You run once, you get yourself one set of chains. You run twice, you get yourself two sets. You won't want to run 3 times." He said, "You won't get yourself 3 sets of chains," because he said, you're going to change the way you think. And here's what I know. If we change the way we think about the information that we receive, it changes everything. You have the ability to interpret the information however you choose. And it matters how you interpret information. It matters that you change the way you think about certain things until you know the facts. So he's supposed to be coming in. He doesn't show up. It matters how you receive or how you interpret that information. And I've even had couples talk about this very thing. They were so furious because the dinner was on the table. It was getting cold and he had not shown up yet. And in this person's mind, she began to interpret as, he doesn't value me. He doesn't value what I've done. It's not important to him. He doesn't care how I think. And so as she begins to interpret the information she's receiving, she does not even know why he's late, doesn't know why he's not come in yet. All she knows is the information that she has on hand, and is that he is late. And he said he would be here at 7, and now it's 7:30. It's information. It's neutral, but she puts a label on it. She interprets it as, he doesn't care for me. He does this to me on purpose. He finds no value in what I've done. Think about when he does walk in that door. She's at a place of psychological tension and stress. And when he walks through the door, oh man, is he going to hear about it and he's going to get it. And she does not know anything about why he's late. Here's where it matters how you think about information that you receive. It matters how you interpret it. You know, in the Bible, the writer Paul, this ancient book that we have, which, first of all, if you're not a Christian, this podcast is not trying to convert you. But being a pastor and being a Christian, the Bible is one of the greatest tools we have of some of the most intelligent information to change your life ever. And this writer, Paul, in one of his letters to a certain church, he says that when you receive certain information, that we must cast down those imaginations or those thoughts that exalts itself higher than the knowledge of God. And sometimes we receive information that is exalting itself much higher than the truth, the true information, the true interpretation, not something that we have developed in our mind, but the true information. Not everything that we interpret is facts. Many things that we interpret are just our thoughts and our opinions. This writer states, don't exalt them things higher than the correct interpretation. Find out. Let's have a conversation. Let's communicate clearly and find out the reason that he walks through the door late before we make a judgment or before we make an interpretation of something that could cause our behaviors to respond in a way that could cause so many problems. That same writer also wrote a letter to another church in these scriptures in Romans to this church in Rome. In chapter 12, he states this: don't be conformed to the ways of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. In other words, don't be caught up in all the ways of how other people think or how even you've thought in the past, but renew your mind. Change the way you think about things rather than coming to conclusions or jumping to conclusions before you know the real interpretation of the information. This person says, don't be conformed to the ways of the world. Now, in this passage, in this context, he's talking about unbelievers versus believers. And he's telling the believers, don't fall into the trap of being conformed to the way that unbelievers think. Now, I want to say it this way. Don't be conformed to the way that you thought in the past. Don't be conformed to the way that other people. Don't mirror your life off of someone else's marriage or someone else's life. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We sometimes, and I like to use Facebook a lot of times as an example. We scroll through Facebook and we see a family. We're thinking, oh, this is the perfect family. They have the perfect marriage. They have the perfect kids. Let me tell you this, and you know this. The picture that you see of this family, most families took 50 pictures to get one picture that was presentable. I call them Facebook worthy. And they take one picture and all of them, we catch them all smiling. We catch the kids are not fighting. Each kid's smiling. And so we take that picture and we post it. It's called the Facebook family. And we think there's Facebook worthy couples to watch. We see them on their honeymoons. We see them on their vacations. They're smiling. They're looking at the camera. Oh, and they're giving all of these accolades to their spouse. Oh, how wonderful they are. But we don't see behind the scene when they're fighting and they're wanting to knock each other out. We see them and think, if I was married to them, if I was married to someone like that, I'd have a better marriage. If they would treat me that way, if we had a marriage like that, we'd have a better marriage. Well, most of those Facebook pictures are not reality. They're going through the same things you're going through. They just take a picture, and you'll do the same thing. You'll take a picture and you'll try to find the best picture to post on Facebook. You want everything to look good. Listen to me. Marriage is messy. Marriage is not always the Facebook picture. We have to change the way we think and not conform to the ways that other people do things. Your marriage is different. You're not married to that person. Don't be conformed. Don't look at other people and try to pattern your marriage after someone else. Be intentional about what you do. And the first clue The first key thing is to change the way you think about certain things. Zig Ziglar stated this. He said that when thoughts come in, I'm paraphrasing his quote, when thoughts come in, or when things present themselves to us, we have to watch what we allow into our minds. That's so true. It's just like, again, going back to the Apostle Paul, when he wrote that in the Bible, he said, cast down those thoughts. Cast down those, get rid of those imaginations. So we have to watch what comes into our mind. So it does matter how you interpret the information that you receive. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast today, and I want you to start today. Start applying this knowledge today. Watch how you interpret things that you really don't know, facts about the information you're receiving. When you can do that, when you begin to hold off on interpreting it in a way that your mind wants to go, it will change the narrative of your marital story. And when you begin to change your story, you start changing your life. Remember, go subscribe to this podcast. Follow us. Leave a comment. Leave a question. We want to hear from you. We want to interact with you. And this will help us move together and get acquainted, get a relationship started with you and me. So do that today. And I want to leave you with this, that I want you to be your best self, live out your full potential, and experience your best marriage. I'll see you on the next show.